Picture a man who has just walked 30 kilometers. His shoulders are rubbed raw from the load he has carried since before sunrise. The light is fading. Every muscle he has is begging him to drop where he stands and sleep in the dirt. Instead, he reaches back, pulls a tool off his pack, and starts to dig. And he is not alone. 5,000 men around him are doing the exact same thing, in silence, in formation, like it is the most normal thing in the world, because to them, it is. They have done this every night for weeks. They will do it again tomorrow. So here is the first thing that should bother you. Why would an exhausted army, at the end of a brutal day, choose to build a fort it is going to walk away from in the morning? Hold on to that, because the answer is stranger than you think, and it is only the beginning. The Roman army did something that should not have been physically possible. They moved tens of thousands of men across entire continents, month after month, in heat and snow and mud, and they arrived at the other end still able to fight. No trucks, no trains, no painkillers, just feet and grain and a level of organization that, frankly, most modern logistics teams would respect. And along the way, they solved 3 problems that destroy armies even today. How do you keep that many feet from falling apart? How do you feed that many mouths without the supply collapsing? And how do you stop disease from quietly killing more men than any enemy ever could? Stick with me, because the last one is the part almost nobody talks about, and it is the real reason Rome won. Let us start at the bottom, literally, with the feet, because an army is only as fast as its slowest blister, and a soldier who cannot walk is just dead weight that has not died yet. The Romans knew this, so they obsessed over footwear in a way that sounds almost modern. The standard military boot was called the caliga. From a distance, it looks like a simple sandal, all open straps, and you might think that is a terrible idea for walking 30 kilometers a day. It was the opposite. The open design let air move around the foot, so sweat dried instead of pooling, which is exactly what causes the soft, raw, ruined skin that ends a march. And the sole was the clever part. It was studded with iron hobnails, dozens of them, hammered into the leather like the cleats on a football boot. That gave grip on wet grass, on loose gravel, on a muddy riverbank where a smooth sole would send a man flat on his back. The nails also took the wear instead of the leather, so the boot lasted longer, and when one wore down, you simply hammered in a new one. Field repair, no workshop required. There are accounts of soldiers reaching the end of a long day, pulling off the caligae and dunking their bare feet straight into the nearest cold stream, aching, yes, but not destroyed, ready to go again at dawn. So that is one problem solved. But it raises the next one, because those feet were not carrying a man. They were carrying a man and a small house. Here is where it gets ridiculous. A Roman legionary did not travel light. He carried his armor, his shield, which alone weighed around 10 kilos, his sword, 2 heavy javelins, and then, on top of all that, the gear, a digging tool, a saw, a sickle for cutting grain, a wicker basket for moving earth, a cooking pot, a water skin, wooden stakes, and several days of food. Add it up and you are looking at something in the region of 30 kilograms strapped to one human being, and by some estimates more. They carried a lot of it bundled on a forked pole slung over the shoulder, which is why the soldiers earned a nickname that stuck for centuries. They called them the Mules of Marius, after the general who pushed the reform that made them haul their own kit instead of relying on a slow wagon train. And the soldiers, I promise you, did not mean it as a compliment, but think about what that nickname actually bought them. An army that carries its own gear does not have to crawl along at the speed of an ox cart. It can move fast, split off, take routes a baggage train could never follow. The weight on the man was the price of speed for the army. Cruel, but brilliant. Now, no single person can carry everything needed to survive in the field. So the Romans did something we would now call a squad system. And it is honestly one of my favorite details in all of this. The smallest unit in the legion was 8 men. 8. They were called a contubernium, which roughly means the ones who share a tent, and that is exactly what they did. 8 men, 1 tent, 1 mule between them to carry the heavy shared stuff, and 1 small hand mill for grinding grain. They cooked together over the same little fire. They ate from the same pot. They were rewarded together, and, crucially, they were punished together. So if one man slacked, his 7 tent mates paid for it, which meant the laziest soldier in the group had 7 very motivated reasons to keep up. 10 of these little groups made a century. It was a machine built out of tiny, tight, self-policing families, and those families had to eat, which brings us to the food, and the food is where it gets a little disgusting. What did you actually put in your stomach to fuel a 30-kilometer march under 30 kilos of gear? The answer, overwhelmingly, was grain. Wheat, mostly. It sounds boring, and it was, but grain is light, it stores well, and it gives you the calories to keep walking. The men ground it themselves with that little mill, then turned it into bread, or a thick porridge they called pulse, or, when they were on the move, the thing that really kept the system running, hardtack, a biscuit baked twice until almost every drop of moisture is gone, leaving something so hard it has been compared to a tile. It is not pleasant. You practically have to soak it or risk your teeth. But moisture is what makes food rot, and this stuff had almost none, so it lasted for weeks in a pack in the heat. That is what kept a soldier fed 3 days from the nearest supply, or 15 days into hostile territory. Around the grain, they added what they could: salted pork, hard cheese, a bit of bacon fat for the calories, olives, beans, dried figs when they were lucky. There is even a record of the Emperor Hadrian, who liked to live rough with his troops to make a point, eating the plain soldier ration of bacon, cheese, and a drink called Pascha. And Pascha is the detail I really want you to remember, because it is so simple and so smart. Pascha was not wine, not really. It was sour wine or vinegar, cut with water. The cheap stuff. The men drank it constantly. And here is the thing they could not have explained chemically, but absolutely understood by experience. When you pour something acidic into a skin of questionable, murky, who knows what water, it makes that water safer to drink. The acid knocks back some of what would otherwise wreck your gut. For an army on the march, where bad water has killed more soldiers than swords ever have, a cheap jug of vinegar was quietly one of the most important survival tools they had. It refreshed them, it gave a little energy, and it kept them from drinking themselves into a fever from a dirty stream. Now, I want to pause for 1 second, right here, because we are about to hit the strangest part of the whole story, and it is the part that changed my mind about what discipline even means. If you are the kind of person who clicked on this because you actually want to understand how things worked, not just hear a list of facts, then do me a favor and follow this channel, because everything we cover is built exactly like a Roman march. One careful step at a time, nothing wasted. Always going somewhere. All right, back to that exhausted man with the shovel, because now you are ready to understand what he was doing. Remember the question from the start. Why dig a fort you are going to abandon at sunrise? Because the Romans had a rule, and they treated it as close to sacred. The army did not stop for the night, not even once, not even for a single evening, without building a fortified camp. Every night, from scratch. They would dig a ditch, pile the earth into a rampart, and crown it with a wall of wooden stakes, stakes the soldiers had carried on their own backs all day, specifically for this. And the layout of that camp was identical every single time, the same shape, the same roads through the middle, the same spot for the commander, the same spot for each unit, the same place to find the gate. Think about what that does to a tired, frightened human being. You could march into a brand new valley you have never seen, in a country you do not know, surrounded by people who want you dead, and within hours you are sleeping inside a structure whose every corner you know by heart. No surprise attack could catch them in the open. No night raid found a sleeping, scattered mob. It found a fortress that did not exist that morning. The digging was not punishment. The digging was armor made of dirt, rebuilt fresh every night, and it is one of the main reasons these men could march through enemy land for months and live. And they could march that far partly because of something most people walk right over without thinking: the roads. Rome built somewhere over 400,000 kilometers of roads across its territory, and tens of thousands of those were properly paved in stone. We think of those roads as a tourist photo today, but they were a weapon. They were built, in large part, by the soldiers themselves, and they meant an army could move in days where a track of mud would have taken weeks. Supplies could follow. Messages could fly ahead. A legion in trouble on one frontier could be reinforced from another. The march was not just strong legs. It was strong legs on top of an engineered surface that an entire civilization had laid down in advance, so that walking itself became faster and more reliable than anywhere else in the ancient world. But here's the question that, to me, is the most important of all, and it is the one that almost gets forgotten. You can have the best boots, the toughest bread, the safest camp, and the finest roads, and your army can still rot away from the inside, because the real killer of pre-modern armies was never the enemy. It was disease. Pack thousands of men together in the same water, the same latrines, the same air, exhausted and far from home, and sickness can erase a legion faster than any battle. And this is where the Romans did something that genuinely was ahead of their time. They built a medical system. They had trained army doctors. They had dedicated field hospitals called valetudinaria, with floor plans archaeologists have dug up, with rooms for the sick and surgical tools laid out. They practiced something like triage, sorting the wounded by who could be saved. They used honey on wounds, which we now know actually does fight infection. And it went beyond treating the sick. It was about not getting sick in the first place. There is a Roman writer, Vegetius, who spelled it out plainly. He said the health of an army is protected by the choice of where you camp, by clean water, by the season, by medicine, and by keeping the men active. Choose ground near good water. Do not let the camp sit in its own filth. Keep them moving. Keep them busy. Keep them fed. That is not luck. That is policy, written down and enforced. So now we can finally answer the question on the title, and the honest answer is not the one you expected when you started watching. How did Roman soldiers survive months of marching? It was not because they were supermen. They got tired and sore and homesick like anyone would. It was not one secret. It was not the boots, or the bread, or the camp, or the roads, or the doctors. It was all of them, locked together into a single system where every piece protected the others. The boots saved the feet. The squad of 8 saved the cooking and the morale. The hardtack and the sour wine saved the stomach. The nightly fort saved them from the enemy. The roads saved them time. And the medical discipline saved them from the silent thing that kills armies in the dark. Take away any one piece and the whole thing starts to fail. Keep them together and you get an organism that can walk across the known world and still stand up straight at the end of it. Which takes us right back to that man at sunset, the one with the shovel, the one who should be sleeping but is digging instead. Now you know why he is not complaining. He is not being punished. He is not wasting his last drop of energy. He is buying the one thing that will let him wake up alive and do it all again tomorrow. Every shovel of dirt is an insurance payment. The Romans understood something that took the rest of the world centuries to relearn. Battles are won in the moment, but campaigns are won in the boring details, in the routine, in the thousand small disciplines nobody sings songs about. The empire was not carried on the point of a sword. It was carried on a pair of nailed sandals, a pot of porridge, a jug of vinegar, and a hole dug in the ground at the end of a very long day. And if that man could keep his promise to himself every single night for years, you can probably manage to come back for the next one.